think that they can't hear us, but I could be wrong. Yeah, maybe.
I got it. With phase two happening down here in Thurston County, Josh, I think this might be my last broadcast with the full main. So we're gonna. Wow, man, it's like Glenn Danzig.
Totally, the pompadour. Yeah, we keep saying it and we just keep not doing it. I mean, Becca did a fine job to trim me up about a month in, and it's just not part of we don't
Yeah,
usually cut hair at home, and it's just not part of the schedule. So
hey, you know. So yeah, we'll
that's why the hat.
enjoy it while you can, right?
Yeah. Okay, we have some people joining. I'm gonna put the bumper music up. Okay. Um, all right, I'm gonna be silent for about 10 seconds, and I'm gonna start the broadcast.
All right.
Good morning, everybody out there. Thank you so much for joining us in here. Um, Look at that background that I have. Isn't that like boring? What a boring background. Why is my boring? Why is my background so boring this morning? I'll tell you. It's because I get to switch over to this with my dear friend Bob, and that's what actually allows me to have a not boring background. Good morning, Bob. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Josh. And yourself?
You know what? It's a good day today. There's sun out here in Burien, and I have some yard work to do when we're done here. So my day's looking up, right? With a little sunshine and a little work to do outside. I can't complain that much.
Yeah. Likewise, here in Olympia, as I noted earlier, my backdrop is looking a little brighter than normal. Yeah, let's do it, man.
Yeah.
Let's get outside and cut some grass later.
So about a million years ago, you and I were outside together down in Costa Rica, and that's what we're actually going to be talking about today. Was we were visiting Costa Rica. You do this all the time as your part of your job is maintaining the relationships with our farmers and our co-ops that we work with. And we have a couple in Costa Rica that we got to visit, but today we're going to focus on AFAORCA, and so I thought maybe you could maybe tell folks out there a little bit about what the acronym is and who it represents as far as our Costa Rican coffees.
Sure. Well, let me also apologize to everybody that's on the broadcast. Christian Mora, who's basically the executive director of the AFAORCA co-op, will be joining us at some point during the broadcast. He's a little late arriving, but he has assured me that he's going to join. So yeah, so we do obviously purchase a lot of coffee from Costa Rica.
I want to let everyone know that what you can't see right now, Bob, is I have a lovely picture of Christian on a swing at the trout farm, so they can see him.
Making introductions. Okay.
Yeah.
So usually in January, it's kind of the peak of the harvest season in Costa Rica. We being Bad Dwarf from Bronson do a trip down to Costa Rica, and we basically visit two farms. You know, we visit the La Manita farm, and then we visit the AFAORCA producing group. And you know, we use this trip not only as a way to really cement our relationship and assess quality with what's going on in Costa Rica at the time, but it's primarily an educational trip for our employees and to really kind of help employees and everyone that works for the company develop a greater appreciation for coffee. Every new employee that comes into the company, I do a seed to cup slideshow, just to really introduce people to the amount of work it takes to produce coffee. However, you know, that doesn't have nearly the impact that being there firsthand, being on a farm, you know, smelling the smells, hearing the sounds, and kind of really getting to know the heartbeat of coffee country and what it's like during the harvest. So that's kind of the primary goal of why we do that trip, and obviously why you went along as well on that, Josh. And then there's kind of the details of the two different farms, and how they're quite different in how they produce coffee, basically in the same area, literally just kind of across the valley from each other. When you're sitting on the porch of La Manita, you can basically look over at the hillsides on the other side and see where the coffee for AFAORCA members is being produced.
Yeah.
So AFAORCA, AFAORCA, it basically stands for the Asociación Familia of Organic Organic Producers of Cariagres. Cariagres is the name of that basically that row of mountains, that little mountain range that's on that side of the valley. So it's the collective group of small producers that are part of the co-op. Obviously, as was noted by my inability to say that flowingly and easily, we don't refer to this coffee as AFAORCA in our lineup outside of the detailed coffee report. This is the coffee that our customers are familiar with as being the Cerro del Fuego, the certified fair trade and organic Costa Rican offer. So FTO Costa Rica Cerro del Fuego is what we're talking about.
And I'll let everyone know that we did just post in our comments a link for that coffee. If you want to go look at it on the website, and then you can click the link just below, which is the detailed coffee report, and which will spell out what Bob's talking about as far as the relationship that we have with AFAORCA.
Yeah. So it's been 17 years that we've been buying coffee from the producing group. And through that time, there's been a lot of change. These are questions that, I'd be referring to Christian right now to have him answer. Currently, I believe there's 29 different members, which is the low number for them, but it's been holding pretty steady at 29 for quite some time. At one point, I believe they had, over 50, if not close to 60 members. But with fluctuations in coffee price and, Costa Rican coffee is expensive. A lot of other countries, I think producers look at the certifications, the organic and fair trade certification, as a means to garner a bigger or larger price for their coffee. However, in Costa Rica, coffee is expensive, period, right? So producers don't really, it's not as imperative to kind of differentiate yourself somehow. People kind of laugh. I remember specifically when we first started talking to members of AFAORCA, Christian and Minor, and I was at a dry mill outside of San Jose because they used to just ship their coffee in parchment to a dry mill in town. And we were at the dry mill talking to them about their ability to process organic coffee. And we're just kind of, standing there kicking it in the yard with some other producers that were, using the same dry mill. And they were just kind of chuckling and laughing at us and Christian. And as we're talking about, maintaining certifications and the idea then was like, why would you even bother, and part of it was that the prices were pretty good already. Part of it was that, the thinking at least is your output or your yields will go down so much that it really, you might get more per pound, but you're just going to produce half as much coffee. So the math just didn't quite add up. But I think, in talking with members of the co-op, it's not about maximizing yield. Obviously, it's about being stewards to the environment, doing things the right way, really just kind of diversifying things that they do. And I think this is also one of the things that really differentiates the co-op. Besides the fact that they're certified organic and fair trade, I think they might be the only co-op in Costa Rica that is certified both fair trade and organic.
That leads me
There
to a
are some other.
That leads me to a question, Bob. I wanted to ask you about, and so when you talk about that almost like lack of incentive, considering that the price of coffee is relatively high in Costa Rica across the board, um, does the organic certification process, however, I know that we just went through a cycle, and you can speak more to this if you want to, where coffee prices really slumped around the globe. Does that organic certification help farmers in situations like that, where the conventional coffee prices might fall down, but the organic can retain some of their value because of that certification?
Yeah, yeah, it does. I mean, it definitely differentiates your product in it wherever you're at. But I think the difference in countries like Honduras, Nicaragua, Peru, Mexico, which are countries where you see a lot more certified co-ops and certified coffees. Just generally speaking, when there's a really low market, those are the producers that are getting hit a lot harder. um, Premium differentials outside of certification differentials don't necessarily offset the the low in the market. And oftentimes, as you know, Josh, the cost or the market price falls below what the producer's cost to produce is, and it's just not worth growing coffee, right?
Right.
So that was kind of the idea behind setting a minimum price with fair trade, and then an additional 20-cent premium on top of that if it's also certified organic. I want to say right now 182 is the minimum price. I honestly don't know. It's been a while. I know they change it based on costs in country and such. So yeah, I think the answer is yes. But I think the answer, at least for by Costa Rican standards, is those premium differentials that you're going to pay above and beyond market price just for, for lack of better terms, run of the mill coffees, whether it's conventional or organic, is higher in Costa Rica than it is in other countries. And there's labor costs are higher. Real estate is a big one there. I mean, if we start talking about the Tres Rios area outside of San Jose, which used to be a hotbed of super high quality coffee production, that land itself became more valuable to build, housing and condos and such, because it essentially became a suburb of San Jose that, the coffee farmers just got pushed out. Right. And I think you're seeing a similar situation. We talked about this a little bit in Antigua, Guatemala. Why is Antiguan coffee so good? Besides the quality of it, just cost and the value of the lands that these producers are on has kind of outweighed the value of what they can produce on it.
Yeah. Um, I wonder if this is a good time for us to switch over to some of these pictures and talk about them a little bit. I know it'd be great to have Christian here as well, but we're just going to roll forward.
Yeah, hopefully he'll make it in. And I do, just kind of as you're flipping through it, I think I mentioned to you earlier, I am tasting. Well, I just approved the pre-shipment of the coffee from the co-op last week. But yeah, go ahead and roll through the pictures, and we can talk a little bit about their milling processes and other things, certifications aside, that really kind of differentiate the co-op.
Sure. I want to let everyone know that you're going to see the screen get a little funny here for a second, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with Bob so that he can see what's going on there, and then he can narrate kind of as I flip through the photos. So you'll see us wink out of existence there really quick. And then we're going to do a share screen here so he can watch what's going on. And he should see a blank blue screen now in my space where I usually am. And we'll start here. I just wanted to kind of show like the front of the co-op's processing center.
Yeah. So this is their wet mill, the centralized wet mill that the co-op has built basically from scratch. You know, when we started working with these guys, this building did not exist. Over the years, some of the premiums that we've paid have helped to construct this wet mill facility. So as I mentioned, the producers are really spread among the valley there, the Tarrazú Valley. This is Tarrazú coffee. And some are coming from as far, I think, as like 30 kilometers away, 25 kilometers away. But basically, 3-4 days a week, or when they're harvesting their coffee, they're going to load the cherry in a truck. They're going to drive it, down the hill towards where that centralized wet mill is, and they're going to deliver it. The workers in the mill there will do a quick quality analysis. Just look at the cherry that's coming in, make sure that there's not too many unripes, not too many floaters. Your standard quick quality assessment on coffee or cherry as it arrives into the mill, and they'll start processing the coffee there. So all the producer's coffee is basically processed in the same wet milling facility.
And there's a photo of the spot where the trucks literally back up. And then what is that? If you look in the center of this picture, there's a little green box on the ground, and we can see him kind of cleaning out around it. What is that green box?
The green box, Josh, I should be asking you this question.
Finegua.
As part of your coffee tour of Costa Rica. So that's what's called a medida.
Medida.
And basically in Costa Rica, they do things a little bit different in that coffee's all measured volumetrically. So it's a measured volumetric quantity of cherry. Then basically people are paid per what's called a fanega. And a fanega is the volumetric of cherry required to produce a quintal, or 100 green pounds of coffee. Okay. So two of those green boxes, medidas, is what is required to make a fanega of cherry.
Got it.
And I think this is something that, obviously when we're doing our tour of the farm, and one of the things we do is pick cherry, right? And I don't know if you remember the little box, the little green box that they measured out.
How I do.
And,
yeah.
So that's what's called a cajuela, right? And it takes 20 cajuelas to make the fanega. So you're basically, and I think what 3/4 of a cajuela was about the best anyone could do while we were picking cherry for an hour.
I will say, to my credit, I did get, I think, essentially a full cajuela. But do you know how long it took me to do that? An hour.
Yeah.
It took me an hour to do that.
So you really do at that point kind of gain an appreciation for how much cherry you need to pick to basically make a quintal, or 100 green pounds of coffee.
So 40 cajuelas essentially, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we're
40. I mean, if Joshua was doing it, it would be 40 hours of labor.
Yeah, and it's a lot, and I mean, so I think we talked, and when we were asking questions on the farm, like one of the real, a professional, like get after it pickers is probably going to do somewhere in the neighborhood of like 13 or 14 cajuelas in a day. So you're really, you're still short of that fanega mark.
Yeah. So next photo.
All right,
here.
So this picture, and I talked a little bit about the stuff that they do that really kind of you know, water, obviously environmental considerations is something that if you're a certified organic producer, you're thinking about and doing all the time. So that carries over into their milling practices as well here. And one of the things that they do is water conservation. And I think this is probably a good kind of segue to talk about some of the different coffees that we've offered over the years from AFAORCA. As I said, the coffee is known as the Cerro del Fuego. But in the past, we've offered like Finca Los Bobos, which is an individual producer's farm within the co-op. That would be Minor Corrales right there. Good move, Josh. Way to move into that one. We've also purchased coffee that's been what we call, honey processed or pulp natural processed. And, in the past, when I talk about some of these different processes that we're doing with coffee, a lot of it, is quality focused or flavor profile focused. But I think originally, when we started talking about doing a pulp natural coffee or honey processed coffee, it was a water conservation measure. It's a way that you can process coffee with using half the amount of water. So back in that slide, like 2 slides ago, Josh, one of the things that they're doing at the mill, even though they're pretty close to the Tarrazoo River, I do think that they could, get water rights or do something to get water, more water for the mill. But they recirculate all their water through the mill multiple times, so it's not just kind of flowing through. They don't do any what I will call traditional fermentation. Even their fully washed coffees, basically it's just all the mucilage gets removed. The coffee then undergoes a period of like a dry fermentation before being spread to the patios. And one of the biggest challenges they have there at the mill is space, right? So they can push this coffee through the mill in a pretty quick rate. That picture you're showing right now, you can see some depulped like cherry skins there piled up in the background. That'll all go and be used to make compost and fertilizer that'll get returned back to the members. That yellow, is it yellow or green? I can't quite tell from it's actually a drying piece of equipment. And it's like a centrifuge that actually does like a pre-drying on coffee as it comes out of the depulper. This was something that, the co-op had talked to us about, like their biggest challenge is space. So how can coffee, spend a little less time on the patio? And, it's that first couple days when the coffee's really wet that it just kind of, wallows a little bit out there. And the idea was if we could just aid the coffee in those first couple days and do a little bit of a pre-dry, then it could really help, traffic control on the back end. So that's a piece of equipment that we helped purchase for the co-op. I think it was 3 years ago now. So this past season, it might have been 2 years ago, and this past season was the first full season with it. But it really cut their drying times from, 13, 14, 15 days down to, 10, 11 days. And it might not seem like very much, but it really did help them out quite a bit.
Yeah, and I was, I didn't load a lot of the photos, but I do have, some images of the beds there, and it really a relatively small amount of space to dry those coffees. And so, yeah, I can see how the addition of that kind of pre-drying step helps them use their space more effectively.
Yeah, they do have what's called a guardiola, which is the mechanical dryer. I'm sure you remember seeing the mechanical dryer. But I, honestly, in the past 10 years or since they've kind of expanded that dry mill, I don't know that I've seen their mechanical dryer used once. I think it's basically a backup plan, excuse me, just in case. the weather really kind of goes awry when they're trying to do the drying. So as you can see from this photo, they do have basically what we call solar dryers, or it's just kind of a greenhouse style setup with covers over the beds. And that, that also helps mitigate some unforeseen weather. But yeah, and it also kind of filters some of the light that's coming down, so you're not cooking. We've one of the things coffee in general over the past 15 years, drying is a huge step in this process, and how they're able to slow that process down to really kind of help improve quality right from the get-go, allow some of those sugars to kind of develop a little bit more slowly in the seed, kind of keep the embryo or keep that bean alive for a longer period of time. It really does have a huge impact on cup quality ultimately.
I wanted to spend just a second before we kind of transition to the next part of this conversation. I being there at the space, and then kind of getting the rundown of how well they use this space, and how this is all kind of new that they have developed themselves. That the co-op, acting as a co-op, has made these investments in the growth and sustainability of their community, right? They're the ones who are directing the use of funds that they generate from their coffee sales. That they built this entire production facility, and not just that, but that they also have expanded it. And now, when we were there, and I'd love to be able to, we'll talk with Christian at some other time about this, but they've also gone on to, they're going to be moving production facilities per plan, I believe, right, to expand. That they're actually moving forward with some new land that they've purchased, like the co-op has, and they're going to be expanding.
Yes. So they had secured funds and had a deal in place, and have purchased some more lands that's not too far from where the existing mill is. And at least as it stands right now, the plan is to build a new larger capacity dry mill, and wet mill, I should say. Ultimate goal being that they can be not only a certified organic processor at origin, but they can also process perhaps some conventional coffees, and have that be a revenue stream for the co-op, being a service provider for other producers in the area that perhaps aren't part of their small 28, 30 member certified group. Kind of it's interesting because the trend in Costa Rica historically, 20 years ago, you had a lot of just really large wet mills that would service thousands of producers. Everybody would come and they'd deliver their cherry to the wet mill. It would all just get kind of mixed together, and you'd get your like I've said before, your run of the mill Tarrazú coffee. However, the trend over decades was smaller mills, more focused on producer specific farms. Even small producers were buying a depulping their coffee on site, trying to maintain as many of those steps and control as many of those steps as they possibly could, and create these micro lots or different processing offers, and so it's interesting to me to see this mill, what started as a really tiny mill, kind of slowly growing to the point where they're now going to be soliciting other producers. And I don't know if they'll actually buy cherry or not, but they will be, basically acting as a service provider, and maintain, the goal, obviously they'll maintain lot separation for these producers. I don't think they're just going to go ahead and mix it all together. But it's been an interesting, 15 years of growth for them. And I think, throughout our relationship with AFAORCA, one of the things that I've always appreciated is the fact that, they don't just come to us and say, hey, we need more money for our coffee, right? They say, instead, it's like, hey, here's what we want to do. It would really help us out if, we could add a 10-cent or 25-cent premium to the coffee this year, with the goal being we want to buy the centrifuge to slow down the to help improve our drying process. And in the past, some of these other projects that they've done have been the cafe, right? Josh, we all went and we hung out at the cafe, and it was like, hey, we want to build a cafe and up at the top of the hill, and keep some of our own coffee, roast it, and sell it to people in Costa Rica. So that was a project that we helped fund.
I
There
want
was
to I want to also speak real quick and make sure everyone clearly understands this, that we are helping fund that. That's true. As a company, as a group of workers who are making decisions, our leadership making decisions, you being part of that group. But ultimately, honestly, it's our customers too. We always want to
yeah,
remind folks that when you are buying our coffee, when you're buying their coffee, you are part of that process. It's we rely on our customers to enjoy our coffee, and then we're trying to be good stewards of those funds as they move back down through our partners, right? And when they come with those ideas, we wouldn't be able to do it if it weren't for all of you out there, who can see us working with them and can see them as well. And that's part of why we're trying to have these more in-depth platforms to talk with producers.
yeah, absolutely. Obviously, if our customers aren't buying those coffees, then we're not buying those coffees.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's absolutely true, Josh. And some of the other projects, like there was a organic fertilizer project that they started to, they were looking at how much they were spending on fertilizer to spread through the co-op members. And they're like, well, you know what, we could just make this on our own, and I remember they use the spent cherries from the mill. They return it back to an area on near their farms, and they basically created enough organic fertilizer on their own that at one point not only were they providing their own producers with it, but they were selling it on the open market to other producers in the area. So it's stuff like that that I think really kind of differentiates them from, it's not just coffee, right? It's not just see if we can grow more cherry. And I think if you ask any one of the producers, and this is one of the things that Minor Corrales throughout, my time talking to him over the years, is, these guys don't want to maximize production, right? They're not just looking to grow coffee. They're not coffee farmers. They're farmers that grow lots of things, one of which happens to be coffee on their farms as well.
Yeah. I think that's a nice segue too to talk a little bit about. I have this picture up here of Minor talking with you next to that centrifuge that you talked about. Now, you also spoke. We have these 28 or 29 families that are engaged in this co-op, and the coffee comes together. It goes through all of the pre-sorting it needs to go through. We know that the coffee coming out of there is the quality we need it to be. But we also have worked directly with members to produce something more akin to the small lot or separated out coffees that folks might be familiar with. So did you want to talk a little bit about that? And maybe we can also talk about Santa Maria de Doda as well.
Yeah. So I think I mentioned it earlier, but this coffee has come in a few different forms over the years, whether it's different processes or in this case with Minor, we sold the coffee. There was one year where he produced enough coffee to fulfill basically what we would buy in an annual cycle. So we just bought all of Minor's coffee. It was called Finca. The name of his farm is Finca Los Bolos. Los bobos is a type of bird that's flying around in the area. So that was kind of what we offered that year. And, he also experimented and did some coffee, just natural process on his farm. He kept it back at the farm. He built his own drying beds and did some of that. And I think we offered, a couple bags of that. So we've kind of tried to, mix it up a little bit over the years. Miner and his family, I've had the pleasure of, staying with him at his farm there. He has, just a lovely family. His kids are all kind of grown up now, which is strange, right? I think 14 years ago or whatever, when we first started hanging out, his kids were in elementary school, and now they're agronomists
they're
in the
working.
country.
They're working
They're
at the
working.
mill, and yeah, they were on break, I think, right, from
Yeah.
school. If the one that was at university, right, and so he was being put to work right there at the mill by
Yeah.
his dad.
So Christian's brother manages the beneficio. Miner's daughter is an agronomist, so she is always helping with agricultural advice and inputs and such. I believe his son's a civil engineer, so he's building bridges somewhere in the country. But yeah, so I got a little off topic there, but we've had some different offers over the years, and but point being, it's always from something that the and it's usually driven by them. I can sit here and say, hey, I want you to, can you do this for us? And yeah, I guess that's okay. But I also would just rather see the co-op doing what they do, and we just see if we can work something out,
Yeah.
and I think that, like you said, Josh, that's a good segue to that, they are adding at time, members come, members go. This past year, they're adding a couple members from a specific area up in what's called Santa Maria del Dota, which it's part of Tarrazú, but it's a little bit higher elevation, a little ways away. It took us a little while to get up there. And there was a couple conventional coffee producers up there that wanted to join the group. And this year was a transitional year for them. So they didn't have their organic certification finalized yet. They probably will in the upcoming cycle. But we went to visit and meet some of those producers. This particular producer, the name of the farm was San Valentin. And it's up, right outside of the town of Santa Maria. And Dota is pretty unique in Tarrazú. It's kind of accepted truth that there's its own kind of unique flavor profile that's found within Tarrazú. It coincidentally, or not coincidentally, is the coffee I happen to be drinking this morning. And it tends to have a little bit of a fruitier cup profile. There's been times, where if you're just going down a line of cups and, you're tasting Tarrazú, this Tarrazú, that Tarrazú, and then you hit one that's from the Dota area, you might think there's like something a little off. Like there might be something that you could perceive as a little extra fruity, kind of, I won't say borderline runaway fermentation, but the coffee itself has a different flavor profile. So we're kind of tasting some of those this year and seeing if maybe next year or in the future we can work out a similar situation that we had with Miner, where we promoted the Los Bolos farm, but that we could go with San Valentin or maybe one of the other newer producers from up in the Dota area.
Yeah, that was a great visit that we got to take there to the farm and to walk through and to listen to the farmer just speak with such passion about the sustainable practices and how they just he had no issue in aligning with them. Right? It was very clear to him that it was the way he wanted to work and to move forward with this land. So
Yeah, I think one of the things you notice is that transition from being a conventional producer to an organic producer. It can be really hard, or it can be really easy. And it depends how you've traditionally been doing things over the years. And in this case, the producer was already doing things organically. So it's just a matter of making sure that any inputs that are being used are certified inputs, and that the paper trails followed. You got to get your soil tests done, and there's always a transitional time. But yeah, and I think it really does boil down to, at some point, like, if I don't think that your yields necessarily have to go down, especially if you've been doing things organically for decades, right? Your soil health is there. Things aren't as you got the diversity that you need to maintain a healthy environment. So we'll see. But and I think there are producers that, even if there is going to be a decrease in yield, they're okay with that, right?
yeah,
So
and I think that we kind of are edging around the question that was asked on the message board here about what we're looking forward to as far as a new coffee from the co-op, and then maybe that's kind of what you're talking about there, is really looking at that more kind of the separated lot or the separated farm, similar to what we did with Minor, maybe is a possibility.
So as I said, I did approve what will be our coffee for the upcoming cycle. That coffee is probably getting bagged and shipped as we speak. The coffee, the little, the Dota lot, the San Valentin, is something that we're just kind of tasting, making sure that quality wise, it's something that we'd be interested in. But this year it's just going to be it's a blend of the different producers that are part of that co-op. The past 2 years, we've been doing what we call a heavy honey process. The coffee's been pretty fruity. Basically, that means they leave as much mucilage on that parchment as they can without having it affect their dry milling equipment. And that's what we've purchased the past couple of years. This year, however, we're purchasing more of what I'll call a washed coffee. I tasted the coffee, a couple of weeks ago or last week. It's the quality's outstanding. And I think I've said this on one of our previous broadcasts. I think, just generally speaking, Costa Rican coffees this year, from a quality standpoint, are above average. Everything I've been tasting has been really good, really nice. A lot of just sweetness, a lot of good balanced fruitiness, ripe cherry, just real good balance, sugary taste. And this particular offer from AFAORCA this year was no different. So kind of looking forward to just bringing that back in. If you're drinking the coffee right now, you probably noticed what we're offering is quite fruity. I mean, there's times where you might think that it's more of a natural processed coffee, but we're just, like I said, we're in the spirit of switching it up. We're going to go back to the washed version and see how people like that. So,
Hey Bob,
hey Josh,
what kind of coffee farm is this?
that is not a coffee farm. That is a trout farm, Josh.
Oh my gosh. Okay. What kind of coffee is Zalia holding up here?
That would be the old Rainbow La Trucha.
Rainbow La Trucha.
De Arco de Aris. So yeah, so as I said, it's not always about coffee. It's about culture. And one of the things that we did as part of the group this year was we went, and it was funny because when Christian was asking me what we wanted to do for lunch, and he asked if we liked trout, and I turned to you guys. And I'm like, hey, do you like trout? You want to go have some fish for lunch? And everyone's like, yeah, that sounds good. And it wasn't until we were on our way up there that he shared with me that not only were we going to have trout for lunch, that we had to catch it ourselves.
Yeah. The Rowena there is holding aloft. You can probably see just below my foot there the fish that she caught. We all caught the fish, and then they took the fish that we caught and they prepared them for us. And we were literally in the jungle, for lack of a better term. I mean, I'm remembering that correct, right?
Yeah, we were up there, man.
Yeah,
that was a go. I know there was some increased heart rates when we were crossing that one bridge in particular.
I'll put some photos. I'll go back after we publish the video, and I'll put some photos of that bridge that we crossed. And I love it. I was hoping to talk to Christian today because his driving was just tranquilo. He had no problem. If I come up to that bridge and looked at it, and it was maybe about 3. I'm not kidding, and Bob will back me up on this. About 3 inches on either side of the wheel. Like that's how wide the bridge was. It was the width of the vehicle, and it was kind of falling apart. And I would have just parked the car and been like, "Of course I'm not driving across that. No, we're gonna hike the rest of the way." I would not have crossed it. But he had no problem.
Yeah, tranquilo, right? This is as anyone that's been to Costa Rica, if you don't know it already, the one phrase you need to learn is "pura vida." Right?
Pura vida.
Pura vida. But yeah, and of course, to me the funniest part about crossing that bridge was, we could have parked at the bridge, and it probably would have taken us all of 10 minutes to walk to the trout pond or farm. It was so good times, man. Pura vida.
Yeah, it was a great trip. I'm sorry that we missed talking with him today, but it's okay because we have 17 years of relationship here with our friends, and
I'll scold him when we finish this meeting and make him very aware that he's jeopardizing our purchasing for the year.
Well, what I'll do is I'll just leave everybody with this, which you can't see, but it's Christian swinging. That was a swing at the trout farm, actually. So,
okay.
Bob, thanks so much for being with us today, talking about this relationship. We of course have the links in the comments here for trying out the coffee. I obviously recommend you do that, and if you do it, remember to use the code WatchAndLearn10. Thank you to everyone who's been using that code. We've been able to track it, and it's just awesome to see you all out there working with the coffee that we're doing demos on and that Bob talks about here. So that's fantastic. And I guess we'll figure out what we're going to do next time, right? Like, let's brainstorm some ideas for the next Wednesday cupping.
Thanks again, Josh. Appreciate it.
You bet, man. Take care.
All right.
And I'm back to this boring screen. Thanks everyone again for joining. I'm going to put it up here so you can see it. Right there it is. Watch and Learn 10. Yeah, I'm sad that Christian couldn't join us, but that's all right. We will get him here. We'll make sure to reach out and have him come and talk with all of you so you can hear more about those plans maybe. That's what I was really wanting to talk to him about. What just is so amazing when we're working with our partners in Origin is, like Bob said, we could sit here and tell them what we would like them to do. And, it is a partnership in that sense. Like we know what the things we're looking for, right? But more often than not, we're just simply following them. I mean, they're the experts. They know what they're doing, and they might seek advice for sure. But yeah, we watch them build and grow, and we try to help, right? And you try to help too. So thank you for being here today. No more of this boring background. I'm gonna leave you now with a little bit of music, and say thank you again for being here. As always, it's great to be with you as we learn how to turn our homes into cafes.